This is the story of a crashed alien UFO and the recovery of 16 dead extraterrestrial bodies. It comes from a recently declassified report from Project Sign, the predecessor to Project Blue Book, the official U.S. government investigation into UFOs between 1951 and 1969. This is what we know. In July 1947, a rancher named Mac Brazel stumbled across some debris while surveying his land near Corona, New Mexico. He immediately contacted the sheriff, who collected some of the debris before contacting higher authorities. After examining the fragments, the Army believed that they may have come from a weather balloon, but this was never confirmed. The Roswell Army Airfield then issued a press release stating that they had recovered a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office. This sparked huge media attention and speculation about a recovered flying saucer, even though the military quickly retracted their statement and claimed that it was just a weather balloon. This event became known as the Roswell incident. It was the columnist Frank Scully who first alerted the world to these sensational stories of recovered flying saucers and little men in his best-selling book, Behind the Flying Saucers, published in 1950. Scully claimed that up to that time there had been 4 such recoveries, one of which was alleged to have taken place around Aztec, New Mexico, when 16 humanoid bodies were recovered together with their undamaged craft. Scully claimed that he had spoken to Dr. Oliver, who had examined one of these bodies, which had been kept at the University of Utah Medical Center in Salt Lake City. Unfortunately, Dr. Oliver died suddenly before he could testify at an upcoming hearing. Scully also claimed to have spoken with the widow of a man who had been part of the original team of investigators. She told him that her husband had handled one of the bodies and that several of the team members had handled the discs. According to Scully, the disc that landed near Aztec was 99.99 feet in diameter. That's the version of events as per Scully's book. But now let's look at the recently released official documents. We can find many similarities, but also some notable differences. The report states that Frank Scully wrote a sensational story regarding the discovery of a flying disc near Aztec, New Mexico in 1947. Scully claimed that 16 pilot-like bodies were discovered near the craft and that some of the bodies were sent to Wright Field for examination. As stated in Scully's book, Behind the Flying Saucers, the group investigating the crash consisted of Major J.A. Wood, Captain Jesse Marcel, Captain William H. Nigan, Captain Wally D. Windsor, Captain Howard L. Green, Major George H. Strunk, Captain W. E. Magruder, and Lieutenant Harold J. Hopkins. All of these individuals, except Hopkins, were interviewed. They denied that there was any truth to the story. There are 2 entries in the interview reports that mention the name Oliver, but neither is a doctor nor an anthropologist. One Oliver, an employee of the Crystal Comers in Salt Lake City, where X-ray films were developed, stated that he saw 5 bodies which were described as monkey-like and about 3 and 2 feet tall. However, another Oliver, who was employed at the University of Utah as an assistant professor of pathology, stated that he saw only 1 body, that of a full-grown woman about 5 feet tall. He further stated that he did not see the head of this woman nor the lower extremities. He added that the specimen was badly mutilated. Both of these men had seen the body at the request of Mr. Frank Scully. Scully's informant, Mrs. Jessie Marcel, wife of the individual who had actually recovered the debris near Corona, stated that her husband brought home several pieces of metal and some rubber from the site of the crash. She also admitted that she had given some of this material to Frank Scully. Captain Marcel himself, however, denied this. He further stated that he had not seen any bodies. Scully also obtained a photograph of the cabin section of the disc from the widow of one of the officers who had investigated the crash. However, after careful study of the photograph, it was concluded that it appeared to be a model of a World War II German submarine. A search was then conducted for the person who built the model, but without success. According to the interviews, none of the individuals involved in the investigation knew anything about the subsequent disposition of the material recovered by them. The report concludes by saying that the investigation disclosed no evidence to support any of the outlandish claims being made regarding flying discs. And in view of the numerous inherent discrepancies in the stories being told, it appears highly improbable that any portion of the story has any basis in fact. So there are some striking similarities between the officially released account and Scully's version. For example, both state that the bodies were 3 to 4 feet tall. Both accounts claim that the craft was made up of different sections and that there were no signs of any weapons. However, there are also some significant differences. For example, the official report does not corroborate the story that there was any gear involved, nor does it confirm that the craft was 99 feet wide. In addition, the number of people involved in the initial investigation seems to vary according to which version you read. In the official report, there were 8 people involved in the investigation. However, Scully mentions that there were only 7 bodies found in the craft and that only a few people were involved in the investigation. Another difference is that the official report does not mention that any of the bodies were dissected. However, this is mentioned in Scully's book. It's worth noting that Scully's book was published 3 years before the official report, so it's possible that Scully had more information than what was officially released. The most shocking difference between the two versions is the number of bodies recovered. In the official report, it says that there were 7 bodies, whereas Scully claimed that there were 16. So what do you think? Is this really the story of a crashed alien UFO and the recovery of 16 dead extraterrestrials? Or is it just another hoax? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other videos on the Roswell incident. New supportive evidence? According to important information published by William Steinman in 1987, there is a large grain of truth in the Aztec story, and he has managed to acquire some astonishing supportive evidence. Like Scully, he is unwilling to divulge his sources, which inevitably lays him open to charges of fabrication. Steinman discovered that the Aztec disk came to Earth on 25th of March 1948, having been detected by 3 separate radar units in the southwest, one of which was said to have disrupted the craft's control mechanism. The area of impact was calculated by triangulation, and this information was immediately relayed to Air Defense Command and General George C. Marshall, then Secretary of State, who allegedly contacted the MJ-12 group as well as the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, IPU, of the Army Counterintelligence Directorate. The IPU operated out of Camp Hale, Colorado, at this time, Steinman claims, and its main function was to collect and deliver disabled or crashed disks to certain specified secret locations. The craft was recovered within hours by the IPU scout team about 12 miles northeast of Aztec. General Marshall ordered Air Defense Command to go off alert status, and the radar units were advised that there had been a false alarm. Marshall then gave orders to the commander of the IPU to organize a recovery team, and contacted Dr. Vannevar Bush, the head of MJ-12, to gather together a team of scientists to accompany the IPU to the crash site. Steinman has named these scientists as follows: Dr. Lloyd Berkner, Dr. Detlev Bronk, Dr. Carl A. Hyland, Dr. Jerome Hunsaker, Dr. John von Neumann, Dr. Robert J. Oppenheimer, Dr. Merle A. Tuve, Dr. Horace B. van Vandenberg. 4 of these scientists, it will be noted, were members of the original MJ-12 panel set up in September 1947. Dr. Carl A. Hyland was a geophysicist and magnetic sciences expert who was the head of the Colorado School of Mines, and according to Steinman, leaked details of the recovery to one of Scully's sources, Leo Gebauer. Dr. Horace B. van Vandenberg was an inorganic chemist associated with the University of Colorado. Dr. Merle A. Tuve worked for the Office of Scientific Research and Development during World War II and is chiefly remembered as a geophysicist for his techniques of radio wave propagation of the upper atmosphere. Dr. Robert J. Oppenheimer distinguished himself primarily as leader of the Los Alamos atomic bomb project, commanding the allegiance of the world's top physicists. He was the director of the Institute of Advanced Studies at Princeton from 1947 and became chairman of the General Advisory Committee of the Atomic Energy Commission. Dr. John von Neumann, the famous Hungarian-born mathematician, became a consultant on the atomic bomb, Manhattan Project, in 1943. His main area of expertise lay in the design and development of computers. The scientists, according to Steinman, were told by Dr. Bush to assemble at Durango Airfield, Colorado, 35 miles to the north of Aztec, with the minimum delay. All those involved in the recovery were sworn to an above-top secret oath. The IPU convoy used a route to the site that avoided main roads, and on arrival, roadblocks were set up at strategic points within 2 miles of the recovery area. The owner of a ranch and his family were allegedly held incommunicado and told never to discuss the matter. The Roswell incident. Equipment hauling trucks were camouflaged to look like oil drilling rigs during the operation. Those poor guys must have gotten absolutely roasted. Hey there, welcome to my channel. And today we're going to be looking at the curious case of the Roswell crash and what happened to the alien bodies. So let's get into it. The morning after the alleged recovery of a flying disc near Corona, New Mexico, a team of scientists from the University of Chicago arrived at the ranch where the debris field had been located the evening before. Their task was to dissect and analyze the debris. However, according to a sworn affidavit given by one of the scientists, Dr. Steinman, the military had beat them to it. They had already removed the best parts of the craft before the scientists arrived. What they did find, however, was far more intriguing than any mundane piece of debris. According to Steinman, the bodies were still inside the craft. A little later, a team of scientists arrived at the site and began dissecting the disc. According to Steinman, they entered the craft one by one, entry having been gained via a fractured porthole, as described in Scully's account. The portholes themselves looked metallic and only appeared translucent on close inspection. Inside the craft, they found 2 humanoids, about 2 feet in height, slumped over an instrument panel charred deep brown. Another 12 bodies lay sprawled on the floor in a chamber within the cabin, making a total of 14 bodies, not 16 as Scully had been told. One of the scientists, Dr. James Bush, an electrical engineer and head of the University of Chicago's Institute of Radioelectronics, discovered that the instrument panel had several push buttons and levers with hieroglyphic-type symbols, as well as symbols illuminated on small display screens. He also noted that the control panel had drawers which rolled out, but no wiring could be detected. Another scientist, Dr. John von Neumann, stumbled upon a book composed of parchment-like leaves with the texture of plastic also containing the strange hieroglyphs. Similar to Sanskrit, thought Oppenheimer. This was given to General Marshall, who then passed it on to 2 leading cryptological experts for analysis, William F. Friedman and Lambros C. Kalahamos, who both later LED distinguished careers in the National Security Agency. Dr. Bonk, a physiologist and biophysicist, examined the bodies and asked Bush to get hold of cryogenic equipment with which to preserve them. Bush contacted his colleague, Dr. Paul A. Scherer, a cryogenic specialist. While Scherer was not involved in the official project, he did assist Bush on several occasions, such as when he advised Bush to obtain some dry ice. Using a portable still, they were able to liquefy the carbon dioxide and fill several thermos flasks with liquid nitrogen, which they used to preserve the bodies. 3 days later, the segments of the craft and the bodies were loaded onto 3 trucks, 2 of them driven by the military and 1 by the university, all covered with a tarpaulin marked explosives, and headed to the restricted Naval Auxiliary Airfield complex at Los Alamos, arriving 1 week later. There they remained for more than a year, Steinman claims, before being transported to another base. What do you think happened to the alien bodies? Were they really taken away and studied, or were they something else entirely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out more content. The bodies. Dr. Paul A. Scherer eventually obtained special preservation containers for the least damaged bodies, Steinman relates. One of the companies which supplied equipment was the Air Research Corporation, of which Scherer was Director of Research and Development. It supplied the liquid nitrogen pump, circulation system, and refrigeration units. Other specimens were given a complete autopsy by a team headed by Dr. Bronk of biophysicists, histochemists, and pathologists. The results were put in a report, part of which, Steinman claims, appeared in the Air Force Project Sign Grudge Report number 13, which has never been released. According to the report, the bodies were described as averaging 42 inches in length. The facial features strongly resembled Mongoloid Orientals in appearance, with disproportionately large heads, large slant eyes, small noses, and mouths. The average weight was about 40 pounds. The torsos were very small and thin, with very thin necks. The arms were long and slender, reaching the knees, with hands containing long and slender fingers with webbing between them. There was no digestive or gastrointestinal tract, no alimentary or intestinal canal, and no rectal point. No reproductive organs were apparent. Instead of blood, there was a colorless liquid with no red cells, which smelled similar to ozone. Further evidence veteran researcher Leonard Stringfield, a former Air Force intelligence officer who is the world's leading specialist on what he calls retrievals of the third kind, shares my misgivings about some of the material in Steinman's book, but we are both impressed with his extensive research into the Aztec case. Stringfield has uncovered further evidence himself. Captain V.A. Postlethwaite, who was on detached service with Army G2 Intelligence in 1948, told Stringfield that he was cleared to see a top-secret cable describing the crash of a saucer-shaped craft 100 feet in diameter and 30 feet high, with one porthole broken, causing suffocation to the 5 occupants, who had turned blue as a result. The bodies were about 4 feet tall with relatively large heads, Postlethwaite recollects. The metallic skin of the saucer was too tough to penetrate, although as thin as newspaper. The incident was said to have occurred near White Sands, New Mexico. Aside from a few discrepancies, there are some significant parallels with the Aztec case. Leonard Stringfield has also spoken with Dr. Robert Spencer Carr, a retired University of South Florida professor who claims to have testimonial evidence from 5 sources, including a nurse and a high-ranking Air Force officer who participated in the recovery of a crashed UFO and occupants in 1948, presumed to be the one at Aztec, although there was another alleged recovery that year, just across the Mexican border near Laredo, Texas. In 1982, Stringfield asked Carr to disclose the name of his principal source, on the premise that our ages give us little time tolerance in our search for truth. When Professor Carr named his source, says Stringfield, I sat back dumbfounded. I knew his name well in research, and recalled some of his comments on UFOs while he served as an Air Force officer. Please, Len, pleaded Carr, keep the name to yourself. Please spare me any trouble as long as I live. My key witness participated in the 1948 retrieval and saw alien bodies on location. According to Bill Steinman, 2 of Carr's sources were aeronautical engineers who provided important information regarding the saucer's construction and propulsion. A source now named is Arthur Bray, not to be confused with the Canadian researcher, a security guard involved with the recovery project. Carr also interviewed a woman whose father was present during the recovery. Information pertaining to the flying saucers must be suppressed, he told his daughter. If news of this vehicle's water-driven engine got out to the whole scientific community, that would be the end of the oil industry. The comment is, of course, pure hearsay, but if there is any truth in it, a further possible reason for the cover-up is brought to light. At the still fenced-off crash site on a plateau 12 miles northeast of Aztec, Bill Steinman has uncovered charred and scraped-off rocks of various sizes, as well as some metal bracing struts that might possibly have been used for supporting the craft. On one of his visits to the area, he was shadowed by 2 unmarked helicopters. As for George Bora's claim that no one in Aztec could recall the incident, Steinman has traced at least 4 people who knew where the crash site was located, one of whom, V.A., recalls that sometime between 1948 and 1950, a huge disc-shaped flying object with a dome on top skimmed about 100 feet above the ground not far from him. The witness pointed out to Steinman a cliff jutting above the Animas River. That thing, or flying saucer, tried hard to clear that cliff, but it hit the very corner up there, shooting sparks and rocks in every direction, he claims. Finally, it made a right-angle turn in midair and headed straight north in the direction of the alleged crash site at Hart Canyon. That's the last I saw of it. I ran into the house and called the military in Albuquerque. I never heard from them about it. Steinman first became interested in UFOs in 1981 when he read Frank Scully's book, and has since devoted much of his time and resources on the Aztec case and the other recoveries associated with Scully's claims, often in the face of discouraging odds. Steinman's job in quality assurance and analysis in the aerospace industry has aided him in probing the complex and intricate leads that he has pursued. Writing in the foreword to Steinman's book, UFO Crash at Aztec, Leonard Stringfield explains how, like many others, he was led to believe the Scully story was a hoax, his disbelief, long being conditioned by a succession of ufologists who for years claimed that Scully was duped by a scheming Silas Newton and his cohort, Leo Gebauer. But now, thanks to Bill Steinman's painstaking research, as well as some of his own leads, he has been obliged to reevaluate the evidence. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more content like this.